If you open up your mind. Or is it eyes?
Eyes. If you open up your eyes. I actually don't know. Oh my God.
It's gonna take some time to realize.
I haven't heard that song in a long time. I'm so sorry. I don't know how to sing it. I'd sing it with you.
Over your shoulder, you know that I'll always be picking you up when you're down. I don't know if that's the right lyrics. Hello.
And welcome back to
The Dysfunctional Duo.
Dysfunctional Duo. Starring me.
Da, 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 da. I feel like we need like a theme song or something every time.
Oh, that'd be cute. Like a little intro song.
Dun, da, da, dun, da, 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 da. Dysfunctional Duo.
Okay, I like it.
Yeah, you like it?
Put a beat behind it. Okay, hi everybody.
Hi, welcome back.
It's officially fall.
Yes. Oh my God.
Okay,
I can feel my body coming back to life.
Honestly,
I can feel every cell in my body just discovering happiness again.
Are you there? I smile on my drive to like school now.
So this is like a side tangent a bit, but like I run as an exercise.
Weird, but okay. Just kidding.
She's psychotic, I know. And in the summertime, it was like maybe about a month ago, I went on a run, and I'm stupid. First of all, we know this.
We've been new.
I was like, I want to go for a run, and it was like, I think it was Saturday or maybe a Sunday, and it was like 2 p.m. It was like 27 degrees outside, and I was like, I want to go for a run, and I wore all black.
Oh my God.
Black shorts, black t-shirt, and I went for a run, and I would have like a black vest that I wear.
And you died. And
it wasn't the running that took me out. It was the fucking heat.
It was the car that hit you.
It was so hot. It was so hot. I was like running to pockets of shade and being like, I remember I took my water bottle, which was for me to drink, and I was pouring water on me because I needed like some sense of relief to the heat. Fast forward now, it's still kind of hot outside, but with fall, it's this crisp wind that just like comes with fall, and the leaves on the ground and the crunching of the like dead leaves, basically. I'm like, I want to run so bad.
Forever.
Because I want to run on the leaves and I want the cold wind. Like I'm just, oh my God, I'm going to be running so much this month.
I'm glad that you like running. I don't know why you would do it in the summer like that. Like at some point, like I'd walk into my house and be like, not today.
Well, okay, like I'm sure people who are runners know this, but like the rule of thumb is that you run when the sun's not at its peak height. 2 p.m. is not the right time, but it was like the time that I wanted to go for a run. But summertime is the perfect time to run because it's summer. The weather's good. You don't have to layer up. Like people love running in the summertime. I've come to the consensus that I do not. The times I'll run is spring and fall. That is what I've decided.
Those are the best seasons. The changing seasons.
I love the changing seasons.
Me
but
too.
Fall, like, yeah. I can just feel my body coming back to life. And like I pulled out all my fall and winter wardrobe, and I've been wearing it, and like all my sweaters and my like ripped jeans and my like plaid dresses and stuff. Oh my God, I'm so happy.
I don't really have a fall wardrobe. I got rid of like basically my entire closet just because I was so sick of my clothes.
Yeah, Spencer doesn't wear clothes.
No, I have like 4 outfits right now. I'm not even joking. I do have some cute ones, but like today I looked at the weather and it was like plus 17. And I was like, oh, I don't want to be hot. So I wore shorts and I'm regretting it because I'm freezing. But it's fine. It's whatever.
Told her when she showed up, I'm like, why are you wearing shorts?
The first thing she said to me was,
like, aren't you cold?
You stupid, dumb bitch. Is the first thing she said.
That's how I greet her every single day. So that's not unusual. But yes, it's officially fall. We planned out the month of October, and then this little shit got sick last weekend.
I'm so sorry.
I have to just take a moment before we talk about what our plan is going to be for October. And I recorded it because it was the funniest fucking shit to me. So Spencer's sick. And she's like, I'm not going to be able to come and record. Like, it's just not going to happen. And I had just gotten over a cold, and so I knew what was going around. And and so she sends me a voice note on text, and I recorded it because I thought it was just the funniest thing, and I'm going to play it for you guys.
I don't remember.
So this is what you said.
When I get in contact with the motherfucker who gave me this fucking cold, I swear to God, Sarah is on site. On site. I have so many ookie, spooky, dookie, wookie, hookie, nookie things to talk about. And I really shit. Slay.
When I find the person who gave this to me, I'm gonna hunt them down. This is on site.
Oh, I was
like,
so mad.
You must have been high on NyQuil or something, because it was the most like loopy message I've ever gotten. I got so many ookie dookie spooky bookie things. So anyways, so we were gonna film about 4 episodes of Halloween stuff, but it looks like we're only gonna get down to 2 this time around, which is okay because there's always next year. But we wanted to like lean into like 2 more substantial episodes, and the things that we're most passionate about are ghosts. And so we will be talking about today, we're going to be talking about Calgary based, more specific, like Heritage Park ghost stories.
Yeah.
Heritage Park is a place in Calgary where basically it's a part of the old city that existed where we live. They kept all the houses. I think they even moved them to be on this site.
Yeah, they like relocated
They
them.
relocated these houses, but ultimately all these houses are of like an old age, an old period of time, and they're all kind of haunted. And so there's a lot of ghost stories that follow with these spaces. And so Spencer has very kindly done her very usual and in-depth research. So she's going to do that this episode. And then the following episode is going to be our personal ghost stories, and just like talk about our experiences with them. So those are going to be our like Halloween episodes for the month of October. And I hope you're cool with that. I think in the future, even if it's not Halloween, we'll probably do some ookie dookie spooky stuff, because Halloween's all year round for us, baby. Like, it doesn't
all
stop
the time,
when
every time.
31st is over. But that's kind of the plan for Halloween. What was I going to say? What I'll say for this episode is the things that Spencer's going to be talking about. We will have our editor put photos for you so that you can kind of see what we're talking about when it comes to any people that we're referencing, as well as the houses, because I think that will provide some good imagery for you, so that you can see what we kind of already imagine in our head. So just know that anything that we're going to be talking about today, our amazing editor and his editing magic, he will make sure to put photos up so that you can see what we're talking about.
Slay.
Yeah. So, I mean, I feel like we just dive in.
Okay, so as Sarah was saying, like, we have a park, Heritage Park. It's a bunch of old houses relocated into like a very specific area you walk through. A lot of movies, I think, are filmed there too, because it's like old Western.
Yes. And where we live in Canada, it's like Cowboy Central. Sorry,
Yeah.
I have a little bit of a little runny nose.
Oh my God, you get sick again. It just goes
God,
back
could
and
you
forth.
imagine?
We'll
never be healthy
No,
again.
I hate it.
But a lot of Westerns are filmed where we live, because it's just like we have the Calgary Stampede.
We are the hoedown throwdown of Canada.
We really are the hoedown throwdown of Canada.
Even our like stadium where like concerts and like sports things are like put. It looks like a saddle. It's called the Saddle Dome.
Yeah.
In case you didn't know.
All our officers are often wearing cowboy hats and like they're on horses. Like, it's all very Western. So all Western movies and things like that are filmed here. Some examples that people would know is The Last of Us was filmed here.
Yes.
Obviously, that's not like a Western, but it's, post-apocalyptic, more kind of like in the wilderness. So they did film a lot of it here where we live. Shanghai Noon was filmed here. The Revenant was filmed here.
Yes.
A show called Tommy the Kid, I think it was called, was filmed here. There's a few other Westerns. Jumanji 2 was filmed here.
That's actually
which is
sick.
pretty cool.
I don't know if I've ever seen the second Jumanji movie. I'll be so for real with you.
The only thing that was filmed here was when in Jumanji 2 they go to the mountains.
Mhm.
They like teleport to like the the wilderness of the mountains, and that was filmed here. So a lot of kind of like the wilderness-based movies. Dances with Wolves was filmed here. Legends of the Fall was filmed here. So there's a lot of like cowboy movies that were filmed here.
That's kind of important. I have a little bit of a snippet of celebrities who have had paranormal experiences in Calgary.
Yeah.
Calgary's not that old though, but the most famous haunted house in Heritage Park is called the Prince House.
Yes.
It's like they call it a mansion. It's smaller than most houses today.
But hold on, before you go into the house specifically, I want to talk about the space of what Heritage Park is. So Heritage Park, it's a theme park in the city that you can go to, and when you enter into the space, you basically are teleported back in time. So it's kind of like Disneyland, but everything is cowboy central. So you have saloons, you have old style schools, you have old style candy shops, you have old homes. A lot of things like Heritage Park is open, not in the winter. I mean, it's open in the winter, but people don't like walk around in the winter, but it's open for the public. So Heritage Park is something that you can pay to buy tickets for and walk around. I've been there probably like 3 times. How many times have you been there?
Oh, I've been there quite a few.
Yeah.
I actually like more recently, because I go with my niece and nephew. I've been like 2 times in the past like 2 years.
Yeah, okay.
And you don't
so
go
you
often.
take your kids there to experience it. You can book events there. I've been there for events. I went for my graduation in junior high, and I went for a Christmas party one year. So
and they do have Halloween events as well.
They do Halloween events that are based around like the hauntings and things like that. They have they have Ferris wheel there. Like they have some rides there and stuff, but it's basically like you're going to a theme park. People are dressed up. So there's actors there who like act like they're in that period time. People are dressed up in the attire that would be at that time. So it's like a theme park, but ultimately the homes and the buildings, they were legitimate buildings that existed during, what was it, the 50s? No.
Like the 1800s.
The 1800s. So these were real buildings that existed. They didn't create it to be like thematic. They just took all these homes and buildings and put them into one place and created this theme park. So yeah, different homes that we'll be talking about, they're actually like you can walk around and they'll be next to each other sometimes or down the road. They have a train that runs through Heritage Park, so you can take like one of the old style trains. They do weddings there and stuff. So anyways, that's kind of like the space that we'll be talking about. But yes, the most important house is the Prince House.
The Prince House. It's like my dream home. I'm not gonna lie. Like it's so old. It's so Victorian. It's so haunted.
Yeah.
Like it's creepy. And I mean, we will talk about our own experiences next episode, but I do have experiences at Heritage Park specifically, so I'll talk about them there.
And keep in mind that all the spaces we'll be talking about, those spaces are things that you can walk through. So like the Prince home, you can walk through the Prince home and see the spaces. There's some areas like the living room and the kitchen, they're sealed off because they have like more antique, furniture and stuff. Like you can't necessarily go through the entire house, but you can like walk upstairs and see the bedrooms. You can see how people lived during that time.
Yeah, it's really cool. So the Prince House was built by Peter Anthony Prince, he worked with like lumber and hydroelectricity in Calgary. He was basically like a big businessman, and he formed the water power company in 1890, sorry. This is like over 100 years ago. This man dead. But he built a dam in the Bow River. He's gone. I don't know. He seems like a nice dude. I don't know him.
I was a little backhanded. All right, continue.
But the house was built in 1894, and he built it. They saw on the west side of town, which I don't know what the fuck that means now. Because this town probably would have just been downtown Calgary. If you don't know Calgary, that also means nothing to you. Mm-hmm. But basically, the kind of like fun fact to remove it, they removed the walls of the second floor because there's 3 floors to this house. So they removed the walls of the second floor and then like just moved the bottom floor and then the top floor, like squished it together like a sandwich.
Yeah.
And then when they rebuilt it, they just put the walls of the second floor in again. Like, so weird.
Interesting. I didn't even know you could do that.
I didn't know either, because I was like, how the fuck do you move a house? And it's built out of brick. Like, it's fully bricked house. And it has lots of windows, too. So I'm like, how do you even do that?
Interesting.
I don't know. You remove walls, I guess. because it's like the floor is the ceiling of the first floor, and the ceiling's the floor of the third floor.
Interesting.
I don't know.
Okay.
It was weird. Also, another fun fact, but apparently this Prince dude was the first dude in Calgary to own a car.
Hell
Because
yes.
he had a garage, so to say, behind his house, which I think is still there. Like, Heritage Park has the original garage, but you just don't know.
But he was decked out in mechanics.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool.
Like, his house had plumbing and, like,
Wow,
electricity.
that's a big deal.
In, like, 1894. That's insane.
Wow.
That's
okay, so
actually-
he was rich.
He also had 3 wives die in the house, too. So, like, that's slay. As far as I can
I thought you were going to say he had 3 dads, and I was like, how does that...
Mamma mia.
Biologically,
Here
how
we
does
go
that...
again.
Mamma mia.
But it's like opposite. It makes no sense.
Yeah, right? Oh my god.
But he did have 3 wives die in that house. As far as I could tell, there's actually not a lot about like the history, so to say.
Okay.
Which is weird because this is known as like the most haunted house in Heritage Park.
Mhm.
Maybe in Calgary. Actually, not true. There's another haunted house in Calgary that we will talk about. But like it's the haunted house of Heritage Park. And it's very quiet about like history, just that his wives died of probably tuberculosis, most likely. And no children were born in that house.
Interesting.
Right? But a lot of the guides at Heritage Park that do like the spooky tours for Halloween say that like there's 2 specific spirits in that house. Both are women. There's kind of like a misconception because there's one woman that carries a baby with her, so they say. But again, no children were born in that house, so they
Okay.
don't actually know what that like who that is. But they do say that there are 2 women specifically in that house. If you go to visit that house, you can see them on probably the 3rd or 2nd floor looking out the window. They often do that, and they'll roam around the 2nd floor. So the tourists at Heritage Park say that the 2nd floor is the most active. So when you walk into this building, it's like a long kind of hallway. The left side is where like the dining room, kitchen usually are. That's blocked off. You can look into the room, but you can't walk into the room. Then you go up the stairs, very like creaky, creepy staircase. And then there's the bedrooms upstairs. It's essentially like the bedrooms are all made up to look like bedrooms of that time. The doors are taken off, but there's like a glass kind of like screen. So you can look into the rooms again, but you can't actually walk into the rooms.
Yeah.
But people say that like technology doesn't really work in that house, even though there's electricity in the house. But like technology will always fail. They'll hear laughing, they'll hear crying, a lot of different things. But when I've been to this house, I have seen people in the upstairs. The first time was when my mom took me. So this was years ago. And me and her were going upstairs, and you can't get to the 3rd floor. It's like completely blocked off, but there are vents in the ceiling that allow you to kind of like creep into the upstairs, like the 3rd floor.
Okay.
So we were looking at that vents because my mom was very into ghost hunting as well. And we saw a door fully open, and then nobody was there, and then it closed by itself again.
Interesting.
And we couldn't hear any footsteps or anything. It was really weird. My nephew, when I took him like a couple years ago, we went up to the 2nd floor. It was just him and I on the 2nd floor, like literally nobody else. And he said, "Can you tell the woman to stop staring at me?" And I was like, "What woman?" He's like, "She's sitting in the chair." And there was just like a chair at the end of the hallway, empty. And he was like, "She's sitting in the chair. Can you tell her to stop looking?" And I was like, "Okay, we're going."
Okay, time to leave.
Time to leave. Yeah, it's weird because like the houses in Heritage Park, weirdly enough, a lot of their history, besides like the like it was built by this person who did this job and this is their like contribution to Calgary.
Any of the deaths or the kind of like dark hidden history isn't really available.
It's not.
Yeah.
And like you can like I've tried talking to like people that worked there, and some of them will be like, "Oh, there's nothing." And then some people are like, "I just don't want to talk about it."
Yeah.
Kind of thing.
Yeah.
So It's weird. Heritage Park used to not do like the spooky stuff. They didn't used to talk about like their ghosts.
But then people saw too much. Like there was too many stories about people seeing stuff.
Yeah, people
And
would literally just go to like
there's like
visit.
books on people's experiences. Like it's in like Canada's top haunted story. Like you can find Heritage Park when you look up Canada's top places.
But like to like get like deeper information is actually a lot harder than I was expecting.
Mm-hmm.
To be so for real with you. Like even a lot of the like the haunted stuff, I had to like dig for it, and like it doesn't give me like
Much. Interesting.
But the only reason like I can attest to this is because like I've been there
And experienced
I've
it.
experienced it.
Yeah.
I've seen I'm about to talk about the Airdrie house. So there's a little house in like the town that's like kind of set up as like a town. There's a little tiny house called the Airdrie house. It was built in 1906, so like new-ish. This is one place where like guides don't really like to go to, like ghost guides, people who do like the ghost tours in Heritage Park. They actually hate this house. And it's funny because like, again, like I couldn't find any specifics on this house. Like there was like this guy named Thomas who built it. It was his house. It gets like inherited, blah, 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 blah. Like it's just like boring stuff. And like there was nothing, no like deaths that I could really see. But I did kind of like go into people's experiences of the house because that was the only thing that I could find.
Yeah.
And like guides were saying that they would hear little girls specifically laughing or talking. There was one. Oh, there it says here too that it's always 10 degrees in the house. Whether it's like plus 30 or minus 30 outside, it's always 10 degrees.
I remember that house being really cold.
It's a fucking weird house. It is like I've walked into it.
Our editor will put photos of each house, but this house it looks like a creepy house. Like all the other houses have this kind of like beautiful, like eccentric look to them and very like elevated, but the Airdrie house always kind of gave me the skeeves.
I guess like the best way to describe it's square. Like it's a square. It's
kind of like a bungalow, like in the way that it looks though. Yeah.
And like it's not tall at all. It's white on the outside. It looks very like early 1900s. It's actually quite small.
It is quite small.
It is a very small house. And it's
but it's not Victorian. Like it doesn't look like the Prince house. That's it's a beautiful home.
It is beautiful.
Like it's not, it doesn't tower over you. It's more kind of flat.
It's demure. It's very mindful.
Very, very demure, very mindful. It doesn't take up 2 floor space. But yeah, anytime I ever walked by the Airdrie house, that space always kind of felt a little sketchy. Like it always felt like it was its own space.
Yes.
Kind of like a house on a hill. Like that's how it kind of felt.
That's kind of exactly what it is. And like again, like I couldn't find anything to like identify that like bad things had happened in this house. And I did find like some people did like what is it called when you use like radio to talk to spirits?
Isn't that
EVP or something?
The ghost spirit box?
Yeah. The spirit box. Thank you. So people were like using the spirit box, and like the name Tom would come through, who Thomas did, I think, build the house. So like maybe it's him. Little girls would come through, and like it would spike, the like EMF reader would spike during certain parts too.
Interesting.
When they were talking. But like that house is actually really dark. It's the one with the darkest house, and it's the only house where I've seen a shadow person.
Interesting.
And I actually mean that. This is a long time ago. Again, this was when my mom had taken me, but this is a separate time than when me and her were like experiencing weird things in the Prince house. I walked up to the house, and the front door was closed. Usually they open them so that people can come in and out, but it was kind of later at night, so I think they just closed the door. And I peeked in through the window, and there was a man standing. I don't know if it was a man, actually, but there was like a figure standing. And when they saw me see them, they like walked off into a corner behind a wall so I couldn't see them anymore. And I thought it was a worker. I thought it was someone like working in the house. So I was like, oh, it's open. And I went to go open the door and it was locked. And I was like, Mom, like I want to go into this house. And she, I think, found one of the actors and she's like, is this like house open for like the public? And she's like, oh, no. We closed that house for the day. And we're like, well, why? And she's like, no, it's just closed. Like, sorry. Like, no one's allowed in that house. And I was like, well, is there anyone in there now? And she's like, no. I was like, I saw somebody.
Interesting.
Why the fuck you lying? But that house sticks out to me.
Lying?
This house is creepy. My sister and I, when we go see it, like she'll like cross the street and walk past it.
It really does
from a
feel
distance.
like a looming house. It is kind of like uncomfortable in the way that it feels. It's also in a weird spot of the park. Like there's just not much around it. But yeah, I've never really liked that space.
It's literally probably my earliest memory of a shadow person, and maybe my last. But it's the first time where I was like, I knew they saw me, or they noticed that I saw them.
Yeah.
And then completely like they just were like, I don't want to be seen, and like walked off into the corner.
That's interesting.
And I tried to tell people, and they're like, there was probably a worker in there. But I was like, people were like, no. And it wasn't like a clear person. Like,
Yeah.
it was out in the open. It wasn't completely dark out. Like I could see into the space. I could see all the furniture. I could see all the details. But this person was just like a figure. And wasn't really like detailed or anything. It was weird. It was a fucked up experience for sure.
Interesting.
Kind of gives me the heebie-jeebies.
Yeah, the Airdrie house has always kind of been one of those homes that people don't like.
No, absolutely.
So that's the Airdrie house.
There is a chicken, a poultrygeist, as they say, that like wanders near the barns.
We have a poultrygeist.
There's also people say that.
Okay, wait. Can we pause for a second? If I was to die and come back as a ghost, I would totally come back as a poultrygeist.
What? Poultry.
I would
like you
claim
die
to be a fucking chicken. I would choose to not be a human being, but to represent a chicken. And,
okay. Like fun side note. So
and
like,
his name would be Clyde.
Clyde the chicken.
Yeah.
Clyde.
His spirit box. Clyde.
I kind of live. There's a dude on TikTok. I don't remember his name, but like shout out to him. He goes to cemeteries with the spirit box and he like talks to people, just whoever's around. He just reaches out and talks to them. And it's funny because like I feel like in most cases when it comes to like spirits, we always discuss people from like the early 1900s or earlier.
Yeah.
Like it's always tends to be that like Victorian, Edwardian era. But he actually kind of gets in contact with a lot of like modern spirits. Like there was
those Y2K spirits.
Those Y2K spirits. And like there was this one part where this girl comes through on the spirit box and goes, fat. And he's like, excuse me? And then a man comes through and he goes, the gym. And he's like, ouch.
It's like I'm being fat shamed.
Yeah, like actually.
Oh my god.
By the spirits. And then they're laughing. Like they're just fucking with him.
Yeah.
And it's kind of funny to see like that dynamic.
Yeah.
Especially I
would only if I had to be like a human ghost, I would only communicate through vines.
Oh, look at all those chickens. And then it's the poultry
potato
guys.
flew around my room.
Oh, 100%.
I would totally only
back your chicken strips.
Yeah.
Like, oh, 100%.
Back your chicken strips. Yeah.
I would like only talk and vine. And then they would be like, what the fuck?
My name is Trey. I got a basketball game tomorrow.
And then they just start screaming, oh my god, it's a girl. And it's literally you.
Yeah. That's the only way I would communicate was through vines.
I've been also watching a lot of TikToks of people who like claim, I guess, to like see ghosts. I would say like I've seen shadows and like I've heard and experienced different things, but I've never like, I'm getting off topic, but I've never seen ghosts, and they say that they look just like people.
Yeah.
And it's like kind of funny because it'll be like an old farmer and they're like, hi, when the ghosts notice that you notice them. They'll be like, oh, hey.
Yeah.
And this girl will be like, where are you going? And he's like, oh, I'm going down to the river to get water.
Mm-hmm.
for like stew or something. And she's like, okay, do you want to like move on? You know? And he's like, nah, I'm just going down to the river.
All right, Farmer Joe, back at it.
Yeah, no,
Yeah,
like
yeah,
he's just
yeah.
like continuing kind of his old life.
Well, there's a lot of ghosts that like in Heritage Park is kind of the space. There's a house that's not in Heritage Park, but and I'll in the next episode I'll talk about my experience there because I did have an experience
Is it
there.
the Dean house?
No, it's the
Oh.
Lougheed House, and the Lougheed House was owned by the mayor of Calgary back way back then. I think he was the mayor.
Maybe.
Had a lot of money. Anyways, he would have these huge grand events at the house. And there's been claims that his wife is seen in the home quite a bit because she was the one who would always put on these events. And there's people who have like done like investigations in that space. And there's been reports of things coming out that she claims that she could move on at any point, but she just genuinely enjoys seeing people use her home. As a place to celebrate. So she stays so that she can see it. Like it's a joy for her to stay. So there's a lot of claims like that of people who the Winchester House is a super popular house in California.
I think it's in California.
And there's been reports as well as Sarah Winchester. A lot of people believe that Sarah Winchester had made the home because the house, for anyone who doesn't know, the house was built because Sarah Winchester, her husband, was the man who created the Winchester gun, or multiple guns, I think. He basically created,
Gun.
a gun that had killed many people. And so she was of the belief that once her husband had passed, she had a child as well that had passed at a very, very young age.
I think her brother might have also, like, she had a lot
of death in a very short period of time. Tuberculosis was pretty high at that time too. There was a lot of disease that was going around, but she was of the belief that the spirits were mad at her because he had created this gun. And so there, for a long time, she was building this house and actively open for construction and building these rooms that would go into nowhere and almost like portal-like spaces. And the belief was that she was running away from these ghosts. But there's been some claims as of recent that she actually built it to give these spirits a place to live. Like it was actually a gift to them, not her in fear of it. And now that she obviously passed on like a long time ago, and now people are investigating the space because it's one of the most popular homes. And one of the biggest claims is that they see Sarah Winchester. And it's because she's so happy to see people. Like she's never aggressive or angry when people are in her space. She's thankful and very content about it. So there's a lot of claims of these homes in Heritage Park of people staying because like these ghosts that people see, they stay because it's their home that they love, the space that they love, and they grew an attachment to the space. And so when the house moved, so did they.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's actually really cool.
Yeah.
I like how, like, especially with Heritage Park, I like how houses can like almost adapt to the personality of the spirits. Like the Prince house.
Like the Monster House in the movie Monster House.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That's
I always
actually
think
a
about
fucked
that
movie.
It actually scared me when I watched it.
Like when they find the like cement body.
It's actually a really sad story.
It's fucked. If you haven't seen it, go watch it.
It's a kid's movie. Enjoy.
It's a kid's movie, but it's really good.
Yeah, it is really
creepy.
good. Okay, next house, Spence. We're going off topic.
Oh, sorry. Anyways,
the ookie pookie tookie things
I will
took
say,
over.
like, the Prince house, according to people who work at Heritage Park, does have a really good aura to it. It's actually very welcoming.
It's giving good aura.
It's giving, yeah. Like, people have
giving good vibes.
Misconceptions that, like, because the wife or wives has died in the house, that it's like.
What if they're just ladies being
menacing.
Friends? What if they're just like.
I think that's like.
What if they're just three exes just talking about their husband and being like.
Because, like, having 3 wives, not 1, not 2, but 3 wives die, especially in this house, you might, like, think, like, oh, he's, like, he killed them. Like, he did something to them. But from, like, everything I Googled, it just seems like they kind of died.
Maybe just had a bad rap sheet. Like, maybe he
had bad luck.
He just picked them sickly, you know? Like,
yeah, he could build that dam, but he couldn't
he couldn't find love.
Wife alive. I don't know. Bless his heart. I don't know who he
Next
is.
Hallmark movie.
Yeah. But they say that the Prince house does have, like, a pretty welcoming vibe, which I would agree with. It is pretty welcoming. The Airdrie house is completely, it's very unwelcoming.
It's opposite, yeah.
But the big house kind of that I wanted to discuss, this one's actually pretty crazy because it has pretty deep lore, but it's the Dean house. Have you heard of the Dean house?
Yes.
This one's not in Heritage Park. But it is in Calgary.
Yeah.
This one goes
It's
back.
not far from Heritage Park, though.
I don't think so. No, they're pretty close together, but it goes back far. So way, way back in the day when Canada was first being like colonized, the Europeans would put forts all across like Canada, and these were essentially their like
Stationed homes.
police stations
Yeah.
almost. This is where like they would set up so people wouldn't be like wild. They could have some control over like populations. Calgary wasn't that big at the
Yeah.
time, but we do have Fort Calgary.
It was also like a safe home. So like if somebody was out in the wild
Yeah.
and they needed food or water or resources, these were stationed homes where you would find those resources and you would find a person who
Yes.
could direct you to the next town.
Yes, absolutely. This is kind of important. The Fort Calgary specifically, is where executions were taken. So the first murder ever happened in Calgary. I don't know too much about like the
Which is
detail of it.
ironic because Fort Calgary now is where people pop off with like concerts and stuff. Fort Calgary is it's still up, but they do a lot of concerts there. They do like big shows, big festivals. Those happen in Fort Calgary. So like the place where groups would, because when executions were happening, people would like go and see them, kind of like
Yeah.
a show. And shows are still happening in that space. They're just not. They just execute music now. It's just
Yeah, they're executing music, not people.
yeah. But it looks
Big
like
difference.
a fort. Like they have the big like wooden column like fences and stuff. Like it still feels like a fort.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's really cool to go visit it.
It's
Go
a cool
see it.
space to walk
It is
around when
cool.
they're not doing big concerts or festivals. It's just kind of an open field space, and then they have kind of like small buildings in the area. But it's like a big spot of land downtown. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry to
No,
cut
it's
you off
okay.
there.
No, it's a really cool space, but like that's the first murder in Calgary, like the person. Although it sounds like it was like very much a racial issue because they blamed a black man. They said it was him, but it's like there was no proof essentially. But he was unfortunately executed for a crime that he probably did not commit. So it's just like the Fort Calgary itself has a lot of like deeper meaning to it, deeper history. In regards to that, and that is where the Dean House was originally built, was on Fort Calgary or in around Fort Calgary. It was built in 1906 by a dude named Richard Dean. His wife actually died before the house was built, but I don't think, again, tuberculosis, I don't think this was a big traumatic event necessarily. She died pretty of like natural causes, so to speak. But he lived in the house for a while, and then he sold it to his deceased wife's brother, who opened it up as like a like a home to like foster people, I guess. Like not a bed and breakfast, but like along those lines, a boarding house, I think is what they would call it. So he opened up to that, and the history does get more. There's more clarity on the history later on, but right like in this area around like the early 1900s, there's rumors that a man who may or may not have been drunk fell down a flight of stairs and died traumatically that way. And then years later, a father and his son moved in to the boarding house, and the son had seizures, was known to have seizures, and he was bullied for it to the point where they say unalived himself somewhere in the house. There's rumors that there's a blood stain in the attic that moves spots, and no matter how much they clean it, it'll always come back.
Yeah.
But it's again, like, people say that he died in the attic. Some people say he hung himself off the like stair railing.
Some people say that he hung himself in the closet.
Yes,
Yeah.
the closet. Oh, you know the story.
I do know the Dean
Have you
House.
been inside the Dean House?
No, I haven't.
Neither have I. I actually I've known of the Dean House my whole life, but I actually never really knew what it was.
No, I didn't either. But yeah, it's one of those homes that if you look up like the top like 100 places in Canada, the Dean House is going to come up every single time. There's a lot of stuff that is claimed to happen in that home.
A lot.
Yeah.
A lot. And then eventually like the Canadian railroads move into Calgary. This house is kind of like in the way. So this French guy who owns it actually puts the house on like a flotation device and moves it across the river.
That's
which
cool.
is like in this time, like innovative.
Super
They're like, holy
innovative.
shit.
Yeah.
That's actually like, that's dope shit.
Yeah.
You're putting a house on water
Did you build the first house
in the
boat?
1900s?
Yeah.
Oh,
I wonder-
the first houseboat.
Yeah.
Oh, they partied in that shit.
Oh, for sure.
I love that.
Yeah. What do you do in houseboats now? Like you just go and like
I've never
binge
been on
drink and party?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Back then, you would have died.
Yeah. Back then it was an issue.
It was death.
Back then it was considered crazy.
But yeah, they moved the house, which people say that like that might have caused like a portal because of the water. I don't know.
Interesting.
It's again like a lot of these old houses, the history is kind of like either locked deep within archives that like I couldn't access, or just kind of like hearsay, which is frustrating because I'm like, what is the truth?
Well, you have to keep in mind too that there's a lot of people who make claims that like we like America's the same, but the land where people colonized was considered to be sacred land because of the First Nations that inhabited that space. So there's a lot of claims of homes being developed on spaces that either had there was war or executions occurring. At the time, there was still a lot of like civil disputes between the First Nations and the Europeans. There in Canada, now the discussions are finally happening, and there's a lot of justice that's being brought towards the First Nations and the Indigenous people who lived on the space, and the injustice that was happening because of residential schools and what they were doing to the children, and like some like horrible stuff. But these spaces in this land, people believe that it created certain negative tones or positive tones depending on the different spaces, as well as the fact that Indigenous tribes all kind of have their own specific lore of what exists. Like if you look in like Canadian lore, you're gonna have like kind of consistent themes of like Wendigos and kind of like elemental creatures that exist in the space. Now, there's not a lot of like legitimate claims to these things, but it is a cultural thing that is spoken about a lot. There's a lot of Indigenous people who even to this day won't go into certain forests because there's believed to be a Wendigo that inhabits that space, elemental spirits that inhabit that space, and the Europeans wouldn't have known of these presence, and so they would build on these spaces, and then that would create experiences and issues, and then that's why houses would be moved. So there's a lot of that kind of stuff that exists all throughout Canada, but also here. All our lands in Alberta are named after different areas. Like you have the Blackfoot region, you have the Tsuut'ina region. These regions are Indigenous spaces.
Yes.
Glenmore, Deerfoot, like those are all spaces that are of tribes and of areas that they called that, and then the Europeans inherited that. So there's a lot of history to those things as well.
I think that's a really good point, and a really important point too when it comes to a lot of these houses, because like the indigenous people were very much there. Like this wasn't just Europeans even building Calgary. Like the Indigenous people helped. They were there. They lived alongside it.
Yeah.
And so whether peacefully or not, like it really depends.
It varied, and that they think that's the other thing in terms of history that people don't really talk about is depending on the tribes that existed in that space, depending on the disputes that were occurring. There were a lot of Indigenous people who co-inhabited with the European people. They helped the European people, and that's why in the especially in the 60s when children were being apprehended from their homes, it was such a tragedy, was because it was an assimilation that wasn't expected and was not justified. And again, like for a long time, people didn't really talk about the residential schools. It's probably a good time. Like we film these stuff early, but it's actually a good time to talk about these things because on September 30th in Canada, we have our Truth and Reconciliation Day, where we basically honor and speak. The day is we wear orange shirts and we speak about the injustice that happens in the residential schools. That was a day it's Truth and Reconciliation. We are honest about what happened, and we work towards reconciling it as a collective group. But there's these theories that when big, massive civil disputes happened in between land and Indigenous communities, not even in Canada, but like talking Europe, I'm talking America, like all these spaces, there's always this continuous reference to these elemental spirits. You have the elementals. In Scotland, there's a lot of lore of these women that are called banshees, and they are elemental spirits that were summoned to protect the people who first owned that land, who first lived on that space, and then were being overrun by colonizers. So there's a lot of theories that the homes that exist in Canada that are also known to be quite haunted, not only because of the things that maybe happened in that space. There's a lot of theories of if you're moving something and somebody is attached to that, it causes an increase in energy. Like there's a lot of kind of theorized stuff, but we have to remember too that this all existed on Indigenous land.
Yes.
So there's, the Indigenous communities are incredibly spiritual. They are very one with the earth. And so you're coexisting. It's kind of like the movie Poltergeist when those communities were being built. They were being built on a burial ground that existed from the Indigenous people. So it's going to bring a certain kind of energy to it. So a lot of people forget that we exist on those spaces. And so these homes are Fort Calgary was a lot of fights happened in that space too, right? It was a fort ultimately to keep the Europeans safe from Indigenous tribes. And so there was a lot of murder that happened on that ground. And the Dean House was built upon that.
Upon that ground.
Yeah.
Exactly. I think the house was kind of like cursed to begin, like a way of saying it.
Yeah,
it was just like cursed to begin with, just like being built on such kind of dark history, and then being moved, and like the dark things that happened in the house. Like it's
so. Let's get into it. What are the experiences that people claim to have had?
Well, okay, wait. Before we hold on, there's two more stories.
Okay.
Because we have the guy that fell down the stairs. We have the boy who unalived himself. Next, we have a worker and his wife who he worked for the Canadian Railways, so he would house at the Dean House because it was close to the tracks. They just moved it across the river, but it was still close to like the tracks, so he would just stay there. I guess I don't know. He like fell. I got this from a podcast. Shout out to the podcast. I forget everything. Like
there's a podcast talking about the Dean House.
Yeah, and it's cool. Like a historic. He actually was able to like go into the records and like find a lot of this stuff.
That's so cool.
But there was like the rail worker. I think he fell on the tracks, and then the train ran him over.
Oh my God!
Over his legs, so they chopped his legs off. Trigger warning.
We'll have a trigger warning on this episode, don't worry.
Trigger warning.
There's a lot of talk of death.
Yes, they chopped his legs off. They tried to take him to the hospital. That was close at the time, but he bled to death, unfortunately. And so his wife waited for him to come home, and when he never did, they say she died of a broken heart.
That's so sad.
And
they lived in the Dean House?
And they lived in the Dean House on the top floor. The third floor, second floor, I'm not sure. But they lived in the Dean House. And then years later, this is in the 70s now, a man and his wife lived there with two girls. They had a very tumultuous relationship. They fought a lot, apparently. And this is the one story that is very well recorded in the Dean House. But they fought a lot. And one night, they put their children to bed. It was two young girls. And I guess like he was angry with his life. He just hated where he was.
Yeah.
So him and his wife started fighting, and to the point where it got physical. They were yelling, flipping furniture over. And eventually he does, trigger warning, grab a knife and stab her multiple times to death. And then when he kind of comes to, I think, from his anger rage and realizes what he's done, he uses the same knife to like off himself.
While the kids are in the house.
While the kids are sleeping in the house.
That's horrible.
When they say that the kids actually didn't wake up during the fight, they found their parents in the morning. How
old were the kids?
I'm not sure how old the kids were. I think they were around like 8 and 10.
Oh my God.
So they were young girls, maybe even younger.
That's so sad.
But yeah, and the guy who was doing the interview for the podcast was like, it's weird that nobody heard anything. Like the fight, nobody got up. But I'm like, well, they fought a lot. The kids were probably just used to it, to the point where it's like, oh, they're quiet now. Mom and dad stopped fighting. But actually realize
Yeah.
what's happening.
Well, and I mean, when you're 10 years old and you fall asleep, you fall asleep. Like, I remember, you know,
Yeah.
even my parents taking me out of the car and taking me up to bed, I wouldn't even know that that was happening. Like, you really, when you're a kid, you conk out and you conk out hard.
Yeah.
So I'm sure, and if it's like white noise at that point, to hear your parents fighting, like, it would make sense.
Yeah. But that was the darkest incident of that house. And
So legitimate
most-
murder
yeah.
occurred in the home.
murder, suicide.
Mm-hmm.
And that's I think the last like 2 years after that, this house was bought by the city of Calgary, turned into a gallery for artists, and that's where like a lot of the paranormal activity started happening. People were saying that there was like the typical stuff, footsteps when nobody was around. They would see a rocking chair rock by itself. A lot of people would say like, oh, there's like a guy walking around the porch outside. They would just see him pacing outside. They don't know who it was. There was one woman who said that she went into the basement, actually, and saw an Indigenous man smoking. And he looked at her and said, get out now. And she ran away.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. I would be like, got it. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
On my way out.
Yeah,
Thank you so
yeah.
much. See you never.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, there's an Indigenous man apparently spotted in the basement who just does not like visitors. But I mean, again, talking about the history of the house, where it was built, kind of makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Some say that they see the woman grieving upstairs. They can hear her scream crying.
That's horrible.
There was also one woman who left a like Yelp review on like the Dean house because she got locked in the bathroom like mysteriously.
That's
and,
so
like, She
scary.
couldn't get out for the longest time. Like they tried to unlock the door and it wouldn't open.
That's so
And
scary.
she was like panicking because she thought she was stuck. Yeah. So there's a lot that like goes on, and of course because of all of like the horrific events, they do think that the house does have a portal too. So it's kind of unknown who's really there. They do have mediums come, and one medium said that there is two entities. One stays outside and one stays inside. They were both like the outside one was more of a protector, and the inside one was more of like a mischief. So it could be the boy, like who knows, right?
Yeah.
But that it's a pretty creepy house. And this is where our celebrities come in, because Drake Bell found out about this house.
I'm gonna be so
Literally. And so he came to the house. He called at this point.
Why is Drake Bell in Calgary?
He filmed a movie.
Oh.
That's kind of why I brought like the Western stuff. He was filming a movie.
Oh,
here.
interesting.
With Gary.
I'll find a
No,
way.
John-
I'll find a way.
John Gacy. Am I saying that right?
If you open up your mind, or is it eyes?
Eyes. If you open up your eyes. I
Eyes.
actually don't know. Oh my god.
It's gonna take some time to realize.
I haven't heard that song in a long time. I'm so sorry. I don't know how
Such-
to sing it. I'd sing it with you.
Over your shoulder, you know that I'll always be picking you up when you're down. I don't know if that's the right lyrics. So just turn around. Such a good show.
No,
That's my
you
childhood
fucking
right there.
nailed that.
Yeah.
I don't want to
Anyways.
get into Drake Bell stuff either.
Yeah,
That's separate.
let's avoid it.
But he went there. He called whoever owned it. It was vacant at this time, so nobody was living in the house. Nobody was doing anything in the house.
Okay.
They had a maintenance man come to make sure like pipes didn't freeze during the winter, essentially,
Oh yeah.
and like
Yep.
take care of the yard, stuff like that.
Yep. Good old Canada.
Good old Canada. I think because it has so much history here that they
Mhm.
don't want to demolish it.
Yeah, of course.
So they just
Well,
it's
and some
just
homes
there.
are protected by the not the state, but like
the city.
the city, like they protect them, so they stay where they are. There was a home for a long period of time that existed right in the middle of downtown, that no one was able to go into. There's like homeless people would sometimes inhabit inside, like when it was cold and stuff. It was considered shelter, but it was a very, very old house. I can't remember what it was called. And for 1 year, there's like an art school we have here in the city called ACAD. And some of the students received permission to turn the house. It was a yellow house. They turned it into the Up house from Up. So they had balloons all over the house, like Up. So it was a huge like exhibition and like a form of art. And a year later, the house burnt down.
Which is wild.
And they believe it maybe wasn't by accident. It was maybe on purpose. But that house was, it was in the middle of downtown in a space where a house would not exist. But because it was protected by the city, they could not move it. So
No.
yes, sorry, that was a side tangent. But yeah, it happens
we
a lot.
have a lot of them actually kind of all over Calgary.
Yeah.
It's just like it's like modern day houses and then randomly it's like boom, Victorian brick. And
Yeah.
you're like, where the fuck did that come from?
Yeah,
But
exactly.
it's just people leave it.
Wait, so what? Sorry, I broke your idea here. What was the point of?
Oh, Drake Bell shows up. He's alone. He's like has his video camera out and he's like walking up the porch and he says that a window opened in front of his eyes. Again, nobody's like, it's vacant and the guy who does the maintenance stays outside while Drake Bell like quote unquote explores it. But the window opens by itself and he says that the curtain moves out as if someone was leaning against the window.
Interesting.
And it stayed like that. And he apparently
and this happened right in front of him.
This happened right in front. Apparently he has video of it. But nobody's ever seen it. Like he's never posted it, but apparently he does have video. So much so that like that whole thing scares him. So he leaves and goes to tell one of his actor coworkers.
Were they filming in the Dean house? Is that why?
No. He just like he Googled like I guess haunted place. Like I think he just heard of the Dean house because it's like kind of famous in Calgary, and he was curious because it's like.
Can the public go and see the Dean house still?
I think so. I don't know if it's being. I don't think it's being used right now. Oh, it's a restaurant right now. Apparently.
Interesting.
Apparently. That could be true, could be not true. And actually I could probably Google it right now. But he brought back one of his like actor friends and they say that like they saw a man walking around upstairs like through the window. And when they went inside, like they could hear like heavy footsteps walking around, but they never saw anybody. They said it was a really creepy experience.
Interesting.
For them. Yeah, it is. It's a restaurant now. Dinner menu. Let's see. Afternoon tea. Ooh. Oh, it looks fancy. Oysters, scallops, mussels. Ugh. Shrimp. Ugh. It's seafood. Gross.
We should go.
It's cursed seafood.
We should go.
Should we?
Let's get sick off of food and
let's get diarrhea from oysters.
Let's get
at
food
the Dean
poisoning.
house. Oh my god, work.
And have ghosts.
Honestly, I'd kind of be into it. I would do it for the experience.
So as we're talking about this is what's running in the back of my mind. And I don't know how we would be capable of doing this, but maybe like next fall or something, we could do like a countdown to Calgary where we do several homes and like go into Heritage Park and film our experiences in various homes and go to the Dean house. Like I wonder what the permissions would look like if we could get permission to investigate those spaces.
I'm sure they would let people. I guess it depends. Heritage Park's really hard. So like when I was Googling like Heritage Park and trying to find like at least like personal evidences, like Reddits have like people talking about like, oh, like I saw a shadow, I heard knocks, I heard footsteps. That's pretty like typical stuff. Where I'm like, oh, like I believe it, but like I mean everyone experiences that. So I tried to find like people that do like actual investigations and like will stay the night and like walk around in the pitch black and like talk whatever. And for the most part, like there wasn't a lot. And I think Heritage Park specifically just does not like people doing it.
That's fair.
I think they're more open to it now because it gets like if you're paying for it, why not, right?
Yeah.
I think they realize that there's money in ghosts, in the paranormal. People will like pay to seek that out as like a form of what is it? People who like to do like crazy things, whatever. Like adventurous people.
Like adrenaline junkies?
Adrenaline junkies, yeah. I think it's a form of like adrenaline for people to be like scared like that.
Yeah.
So people obviously seek it out. And like I've had experiences, so like I think it's pretty true that they're haunted. I mean, they're old enough.
That's interesting. Do you have more houses? We're hitting our hour soon.
So no.
Okay, I'm going to tell you one experience then from Heritage Park.
Oh, please do. I'm so excited.
So in Heritage Park in the center, there's a large building. It's called the Heritage Saloon. And
Yes.
in the saloon, it's like a restaurant during the day. So you can go and have like lunch there or whatever. And on the main floor, you have your tables as the dining area. And then upstairs is like it back when it existed in Calgary and there was, like boudoirs and stuff.
Mhm.
This was also a boudoir. So the prostitutes would live upstairs and then they would tend to the men, and then you would come down to the saloon, you'd have a drink and, cigarette and play your poker and stuff. That was kind of how the space was prior to. But again, they don't really share a lot of the history to that, but that's what was theorized because they have a lot of boudoir rooms
Mhm.
upstairs. When I was in junior high, we had done our graduation there. And so I was in grade 9 and we went to Heritage Park. Like they had booked the space so that we could hang out in the saloon. We had our dinner and our banquet in the saloon on the bottom floor. And then the girls went off and like took photos as like our grad photos for junior high. And we had gone upstairs to take photos, and there was like maybe 12 of us or whatever, and we were upstairs. And I had told the girls that I was going to go to the bathroom, and the bathroom was down at the end of the hall. And the girls were taking photos at the front of the hall in like 2 of the rooms. And so I went and I was using the restroom, and the restroom they had renovated it to be a stall bathroom. So it wasn't a singular bathroom. There was multiple stalls. And when you walked in, like the door would have like a bit of like a creak, and then there was the multiple stalls. Anyway, so I broke off from the 12 girls. Everyone else was downstairs. There was only a few of us, and the hall is relatively long. So it's not like you could hear them right outside. Like they were, like there was 10 rooms separating us from the bathroom to the rooms that they were taking photos in. And I went to the restroom and I was in the stall. And as I was in the stall, I heard like a slight creak to the door. And then I heard lighter footsteps, nothing too heavy, but I heard somebody walking in the stall. And I was at the end of the bathroom. So I was at the last stall in the restroom.
Mhm.
And I heard somebody walking towards me in the stall. But I couldn't see anything. And so I called out for whoever it was, because I thought it was maybe one of the girls, because we were all wearing flats. Like we weren't really wearing high heels. We were in junior high.
Mhm.
So I thought maybe it was one of the girls that I was with. And I was like, hey, like, are you, are you using the restroom too? Like, it's really cold in here, blah, blah, blah. And I was trying to generate conversation and no one responded to me. And so I got kind of freaked out. I quickly finished my business. And when I opened the door, no one was in the bathroom.
You didn't like hear anybody like leave or anything like that?
No, I heard the door creak a little bit. Like when I opened the door, it was like,
Mhm.
and when I was in the stall and I heard it, it was like a, so I thought maybe somebody slid into the door. Like it was a quick,
Yeah.
like movement. And then I heard
Oh, yeah.
like somebody was walking towards my
That's a
stall.
horse. That was galloping.
So I thought somebody was walking towards my stall, and I was waiting for somebody to go into the stall next to me because it sounded like that's where they were going. And these were like the old stalls. So they were really high up. Like it wasn't like your bathrooms where you feel like everybody and anybody can see you. They were like the big wooden stalls. And then obviously like new plumbing. And so I opened the stall door, and when I looked to my right, the door wasn't closed. And then I kept moving down and no one was in the bathroom. And so I was like, what the hell? And so I opened the bathroom, like the door to the hallway, and all the girls, most of the girls had gone back downstairs, and there was 2 girls they were taking selfie photos in the last bedroom. So I could barely hear them. And so I was like, what the heck is like, okay, weird. So then I quickly washed my hands because I'm a little freaked out. And I walked down the hall, and the 2 girls who were in the room, I said, did anybody go to the bathroom? And they were like, no, like all the girls went back downstairs. And I was like, okay, like it sounded like somebody was in the bathroom with me. And they were like, really? And I was like, yeah. So then they were like, okay, like whatever, we're like brushing it off. Or like, I'm like, maybe I'm being paranoid, like whatever. And we hadn't heard any ghost stories. I wasn't even thinking about ghosts of the space. Like we were celebrating our graduation. And then we were in the last room and we were taking pictures, and I was taking pictures of the girls, and all of a sudden we hear one of the doors slam, like loudly slam. So we get freaked out because we're thinking we're not allowed to be upstairs. And one of the staff who were downstairs came upstairs and were like,
what the fuck?
Pissed. Yeah. So we very quickly are like, okay, like let's get out of here. Like we're going to be in trouble. And as we're walking by the doors, we see one of the doors is like slammed close. And out of curiosity, I was like, I wonder who's in there? Like, do you think it's one of the servers? Like, do you think they're upset? So me and my friend, we like put our ear up against the door. And like, again, like we're just kids like fucking around. Like there's nothing paranormal about this. And like we put our ears up against the door because like we're kids, we're like messing around, and somebody like knocks on the door. And so we very quickly are like, oh my God, okay, we gotta get out of here. So we run down the stairs, and our table was the last table in the back near the stairs. And so we're having dinner and stuff, and no one ever comes downstairs.
Oh my God.
And like all the staff is on the main floor with us, serving us. Like the chefs are in the kitchen. Like no one's upstairs. Like no one's come. And like we were in that banquet hall for like 6 hours.
I think personally that the ghosts at Heritage Park, because they're people, I actually think they just fuck with us half the time.
Well, so then after I went home and I was talking about the junior high and like graduation and stuff, I was talking to my parents about it, and my dad was like, well, Heritage Park is like super haunted, right? And I was like, well, yeah, but like we were in the saloon, and he's like, well, the saloon's haunted too. And so I got curious and I started looking up different like articles and stuff. And there's a known individual in the saloon, a gentleman who was a like constant customer of the girls upstairs. And he was super protective of the women upstairs because he would go and see them a lot. And so he's, they don't know his name, but he walks, or you always hear his footsteps in the space. You always hear him walking behind you. And so
Creepy.
I was always like, I wonder if what we maybe interacted with was this guy who, because we were girls upstairs in like pretty attire. And I was in a separate room. So the stall where the bathroom was, that was a bedroom. That was like a room where the girls inhabited. Like they had just renovated it into a bathroom. But I was in a room alone, and somebody had come in. So I always wonder if maybe this person just thought like I was one of the women in this space.
Maybe
and
he was like
had come
tracing like footsteps or something. Like maybe he doesn't even, I don't even know if they like see us fully in that
Well,
moment.
and this is all theorized. Like this is me just guessing, but I was in the room. I didn't hear anybody, and then I left. So there was no engagement on his end.
Yeah.
And he might have been pissed that he didn't receive treatment.
He's like, what? I paid good fucking money.
Yeah.
You're like 14. I paid good fucking money, bitch.
Yeah. And we're in like beautiful attire. We're like 12 women upstairs. We may have filled the space how it would have felt before. So like I'm always curious if like this guy just like he was just like vibing in the space. But it wasn't like light footsteps. It was like a normal human being. Like it could have been a man who was walking around. I wouldn't have known. Like it wasn't super light.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
That's scary, especially in a bathroom.
And it wasn't quiet. Like it sounded like somebody was in the bathroom with me.
Oh my God.
And to the point where I acknowledged that somebody was in the bathroom with me. Like I called out to them.
And you said it was cold in there?
The bathroom was really cold, but I wonder if that was just because of, I don't know.
Well, it is an old house.
And I mean, it's the bathroom, right? Like the bathrooms are always kind of chilly.
Yeah.
But it was cold in the space, and I was wearing like a strapless white dress. So I wasn't like dressed for
Were you taking a dump?
No, I was peeing.
Oh, okay. Can you imagine? A ghost walks in, you're just like, it's cold out here, right? Like, fuck no. I want my like money back. I don't want.
He was like, I didn't know this is the show I was coming for. I'm gonna leave. That's why he didn't answer me.
He's like surprised Pikachu face.
No, and that's why I was talking, because it was like, you're just, number one, it's like girls are being girls, right? Like you have conversations. Sure. Like any girl knows that like you go to the bathroom with a girl and you're taking a little pee. You're gonna talk to your friends. Like it's super normal. of course, like number 2, everyone shuts the fuck up and
Yeah, you got a grip on. You can't talk.
Just do your business. Pretend that nobody hears anything. And the worst thing is like when you're in the bathroom and like someone like you're in like the stall next to somebody and like a little toot comes out and you know that they know that you know that they did that.
Yeah.
But no one's gonna fucking.
No one's gonna talk.
No one's going to talk about. No one's going to acknowledge it. We're gonna pretend that we just didn't hear it. And you want to get out of that bathroom as fast as possible because you do not want to make eye contact.
No,
with
you
the
don't want to see
person.
their face. You're like, now that it happened, I have to leave now.
Yeah,
I have to wash.
You cannot
my hands.
identify me as a person above my knee.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
100%. I will
100%.
lift my legs. You can't even see them.
I wonder if men are like that too.
No, I don't know. They probably like fart on each other. I don't know.
It's also like such a common rule, and this is a side tangent, but like Leo and I, we recently moved to like a different gym, and the change rooms, the gym in and of itself is like very glamorous. Like they have like neon lights and stuff. Like it's a pretty cool gym.
Mm-hmm.
But the women's change room is like you have your lockers, you have your bathroom, you have your shower, your sauna, and then you have like this like entrance room when you enter in, and it has like beautiful blue velvet like chairs, like lounge chairs.
Ooh.
And then mirrors on the wall that are like LED lit so you can take pictures and stuff. It's like very, very beautiful. And it
Fancy.
always smells so good. And I was telling Leo about this, and he's like, "We don't have that in our bathroom. Like, it's just toilets
It's a
and like
shed.
lockers.
It's a free
yeah,
for all.
it's just,
There's a hole in the
like,
ground.
there's nothing exciting for the men, but the women have these beautiful spaces. So I also wonder if like that, you know, you like women like have opposite ends to avoid each other when stuff like that happens, whereas men are like, this is all we have. Like, we're going to run into each other.
Oh, probably.
Yeah.
The ghost walks in. He's like, this bathroom looks like the other bathroom. He's so mad about
Yeah,
it.
exactly. So that's the only experience that I've had at Heritage Park. I will say the only other space that ever kind of gave me the skeevies was further down from the saloon was these schools that they had brought in, and it's basically like it's tiny. They're super, super small. Like they're the size of maybe like your living room, and it's very much kind of like how you would assume like a scary classroom would be back then, but it's basically a building with a chalkboard and then desks for kids. Like there's nothing else in the school.
It's 4 walls.
It's like 4 walls. They didn't have bathrooms back then at that point. Like you would go outside to use the outdoor bathrooms.
Yeah.
And so when we walked in, it was like no lights were on. There was only like 2 windows at the front and tiny little desks and a chalkboard. And I always felt really uncomfortable in that space.
Yeah.
I don't know why, but I never liked that area of the park.
There's actually quite a bit. Like the they have like a little theater. I don't know if it was. I think it might have been a barn at one point, but they turned it into a theater for like field trips for schools that come.
Yeah.
They just show videos and stuff. They say that like things happen in that bathroom as well.
Yeah.
I think they built that bathroom later on.
And there's like claims and stories. Like the pretty predominant people of the park is there's a lady in white.
Yeah, she's at the Prince house.
She's at the Prince house. She's seen as being in this white dress. They see her a lot on the staircase of the house.
I couldn't find anything. Like I know of her, but I couldn't find anything definitive to say.
Yeah.
Like, just like
the only stories I've heard is like there was a guy when we were at the park. He was talking about like he was the security guard, and he said that his dad had worked at the park when he was a kid, and then he just went and got a job there, and then was a security guard when I was there with my parents. And he said that his dad had been walking by the Prince house, and at the time he had like his dog with him who would go on patrol because he would patrol the grounds. Like you would leave the space that you were like stationed in, and you would walk around the grounds to make sure nobody was in Heritage Park. And he walked by the Prince's house at like 11 o'clock at night, and he was with his dog, and his dog lost it at the Prince house, like was losing his mind barking at this house. And he like tried to like pull his dog away, and his dog kept like barking. His dog wasn't trying to go into the house. He was just barking at the house. And then as he walked further away, and they were like far enough from the house that they could see, like he couldn't see anything definitive of the house, but more just of the house.
Yeah.
He said he saw a woman in white standing at the front door of the house.
Interesting.
Yeah. So there's obviously like side claims like that.
The Airdrie house is fucked.
The Airdrie house is probably the more scary of the houses, but there's not a lot of claims. But it very much feels like how when, like, the gloominess of that house is how you feel when you see the picture of the family from the Conjuring home at the end of the Conjuring movie.
Yeah.
Like how gloomy that picture feels and how like just kind of like devoid of life it feels. Defeated. That is exactly how the Airdrie house feels when you walk by it, and like whether it's in the sunlight or later in the evening, it always looks that way. And even the photos of it always kind of just feel it's like an old barn house is how it feels. It's very creepy.
It's just so unwelcoming.
It's very unwelcoming.
I still couldn't even find like a definitive of like who might actually be there.
Yeah.
There is like a person attached to it. I just know that the few times I've interacted with that house, I've seen and felt so much that I skip that house now usually.
Mm-hmm.
But I always, before I enter any house in that park, I always knock on the door first. Just to let them know I'm coming in.
Yeah.
Because, I don't know, imagine your house just like on display 24/7.
Well, and that's why I wonder if like a lot of these situations is like you're running into these ghosts that own this home. Like I always think of the others when I'm thinking about this experience, that like these people may not even know that they're dead. Mm-hmm. And you're entering into their home. And so ultimately they're trying to figure out what you're doing there, but not being able to communicate it. So I always wonder if like those situations when like somebody locks a bathroom door on you or something, it's because they're like, who's this person in my bathroom? Like it's never malicious. It's more of just, why are these people in my space? But it's the same thing as like the Dean house is a really good example of it, where like maybe there was such devastating stuff that happened in that space that there's just residual energy. Like these things aren't actually conscious. It's just like it was such a catastrophic event that you capture that event on replay.
Yeah.
Like the wife who was sobbing when she found out that her husband had passed. Yeah. Like that's a definitive emotional event that just becomes its own identity.
And it just lives on in a loop.
Yeah.
For who knows how, 300 years sometimes it takes.
Well, that's why like some people will be like, I've heard this person and they always take this same route. And it's like, well, is this thing even conscious, or is it just a residual of an event? Same thing with the blood spot, right? Like, is that considered a residual energy?
Right.
So anyways, that's this episode. On the next episode, we'll go more into detail of personal experiences that have also happened in Calgary, but aren't on like theme parks or anything. It's more just like places that, well, more so I have lived, but you have your own experiences.
I have my own experiences, more so in childhood. We'll get more into it. But yeah, I have experiences where she's lived and it was fucked. So you honestly, like, that'll be a good one to tune into, because I have so much to say about that place.
Yeah.
Oh, I have so much to
crazy. Say. But yeah, that was this episode. This was your Ookie Pookie Part 1 podcast.
Ookie Nookie Dookie.
Ookie Nookie Dookie in ghostly sightings in Heritage Park. Thank you for hanging out with us for a little over an hour. Come back and hang out with us next week as we talk about our personal ghost experiences. And you can follow us here. The socials will pop up here because our editor is just the most amazing human being ever, and he just knows. And
we can't remember.
But it's either _dysfunctional-duo, or you can find us at dysfunctional-duo. Those are our social posts. You can find us on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, and Spotify.
Yay! Have a good Halloween. It's not Halloween yet. Have a good October.
Have a good October. Enjoy your fall shenanigans. And
we'll see you next week.
We'll see you next week.
Bye.